Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone in the ladies' lounge and beyond. We have our relationships done different header on today because we're talking about something that shows up a lot in relationships, but very much other parts of our lives as well. So things like blame, shame, regret, guilt, obsessive, compulsive, addictive points of view, love, sex, jealousy, relationship, and all these other elements that all kind of keep us from having the life, the relationship, the ease that is really possible to all of us, and can be very available. So we wanted to jump on and have a little chat about it today. So I think Viv and I were just having a conversation before, and Viv, you were saying that you have a little bit of a story, maybe that you can share with us at some point.
Yeah, and whether I just kind of jump in, because when we talk about relationships done different, how many of you just automatically jump to the conclusion or assume that we're talking about your significant other or your insignificant other or your enjoyable other, your husband, your lover, your wife, your partner, or friends or whatever. But yes, it includes those relationships, because that's often where we see a lot of what Tiff's just spoken about showing up, like if you're in your own space and you're happy on your own and you've had a day to yourself, or a couple of days to yourself, none of this stuff tends to show up. But as soon as you're with somebody that you've made significant or that means something to you, how many other parts to your character suddenly start raising their head? And it's like, where did you come from? So yeah, the distractor implants, it's literally, as the name suggests, they are points of view, their emotions, their thoughts, feelings, emotions, and reactions and patterns and things that get triggered, or buttons that get pressed when you're in a certain environment or with a certain person. So, and they're designed to distract you from being you. So how do you get to being you in relationship? How do you get to have that joy and the ease and the peace that you might experience when you're on your own? How do you start, inviting that and embodying it and being it in your personal relationships?
And in your relationship with yourself, it's like these are the sorts of things that show up for us. And when you're functioning, whether it's in your own mind with yourself, and that's that relationship with yourself, or like Viv saying, when you're functioning in relationship to another person, whether it's a lover or a husband, a wife, or a workmate or a child or whatever, how often do you find yourself reacting to certain things in a way and getting into these kind of looping things of things like blame or shame or regret or guilt, and you can't seem to get out of them? You can't seem to, it's almost like you don't have control over your own emotions. And that's what these things are. And you can actually change it and get out of it, which is the cool side of this story, is that it is changeable.
Yeah, and that whole thing about, anywhere that you're stuck in your life, I would pretty much say 99% of the time you're functioning from one of these distractor implants. And again, it's like, how do we get out of the going round and round, the reaction, the anger, the fighting, the blame, whatever it is? And one of the ones, when I first discovered these distractor implants, probably about 15 years ago now, the two that were really just crippling with me, it was like I had fear and doubt. They were the two that were like, I had two Grim Reapers walking either side of me, and they used to just tag team. I'm sure they did. They just used to pass the baton. And, I would doubt and question myself. And then I'd be in a relationship, or I'd be with my partner at the time. And then he'd pick up on that and start weaving into it even more, even unconsciously. So then I'd go into more insanity, and then I'd go into the fear of, well, what if he leaves me? What if I'm alone? What if, how am I going to fend for myself? And all of these stories started to come up because I'd been believing the implant that without a relationship, that I wasn't anything, or that I wasn't, there was something wrong with me. I'd failed, or that there was, what's wrong with me that I don't have a partner or a relationship. And yet reading the distractor implant book and studying these and, attending the foundation class where we go into this a lot more, and reading the Living Beyond Distraction book, which came out years later after I'd started Access, that point where you realize you can get out of this with a level of awareness, with a commitment to yourself. And that's the biggest thing, making the commitment to yourself, because I had no problem committing to my relationship. But that was where, for me, the insanity was lying, because I kept giving away myself and what I knew was possible to try and make a relationship work, which kept me in this lie of who would I be if I don't have a relationship?
Mm. Yeah. And I'm sure there's nobody out there listening now or in the future who's ever given up any part of themselves for a relationship, right?
No, never.
And relationship is actually one of these distractors as well. Relationship and love, and you kind of go, love? What? Love's awesome, love's amazing. But it's like, how many people are distracted by this promise of a great love, or the promise of the perfection of love, or the promise of the love that you really want but don't think that you're ever going to get. And again, there are all these things that distract us from having us, and you kind of go, well, what is that? Well, good question. What is that? Like, if you had all of you, what could be possible in your life and in the world?
And creating the relationship, instead of feeling stuck in a certain situation with a certain person, instead of going round on the merry-go-round and having the same fight every month and having the same conversation and the same accusations going backwards and forwards, where you just want to pull your hair out because there's the frustration of it's not changing. I know I want something different, but we we end up fighting ourselves. And that's, again, it distracts you from being what you can be to change this. And with the tools and the awareness, you can change anything. So, I had a great example this morning, because, like I say, doubt was probably the number one thing. And then fear was a very close second, and they were this deadly duo. And to give you an example this morning of how I use the tools and how doubt and fear are so minimal in my life now, they haven't gone totally, but it's like, I know when this deadly duo come out to try and, wrestle me and take me to the ground. And it's like, oh, you guys again, really, But this morning I was out walking the dog, and I went to towel her off to put her in the car. She'd been for a swim, and I put my phone down on the pavement, and I had the awareness, be aware you've left your phone on the pavement. It was a really unusual place for me to put the phone. So, of course, what did I do? I drove off and left my phone on the pavement. 2 minutes down the road, and it's in a really busy, cafe kind of district where it's Sunday morning. Everybody's out having a great time with their families and what have you. It was packed. Couldn't find a car parking spot. Anyway, so 2 minutes down the road, I went, where's my phone? By the time I'd gotten to the realization, I had to go all the way around the block and then try and find somewhere to park. Long story short, my phone wasn't there. So I went, okay. I went straight to question. I went, okay, what's next? What do I do next? What's required for this phone to come back to me? So instead of going into, oh my God, I'm never going to get it back, and that's it, I'll have to go to Telstra and get a new phone, the cost of all of that, I just stayed in the question. And what I got was, there was a convenience store, like literally 2 meters up from where I'd left my phone. And I walked in there, and I knew the woman behind the counter knew something. She's Chinese. She didn't speak a word of English. So I said to her, not knowing this, I said, did anybody hand a telephone in this morning? And she's looking at me completely blankly going, and I said, did anybody hand a telephone in? And she just shook her head. And I went, okay. So I walked back out the shop, and I went, okay, what's next? Anyway, I just stayed in the question. I bumped into a friend, borrowed their phone. Long story short, I went back to the shop 4 times, and I actually said to this lady, she had a translator on the phone. So she just handed me a phone, and I put into it in English, and she translated it, and she just shook her head, but she looked really different. I went, she knows something. And then I went, oh, why don't I ring my phone? Duh. So I rang my phone. I asked her again through Translate, can I ring my phone? So she gave it to me. A guy picked up, and he said, yeah, he said, I've got it here. It's just, I live just around the corner. Come and pick it up. And I said, oh, that's really strange. I said, I'm in the convenience store. He said, yes, I tried to give it to her because I knew that somebody probably would have gone into the shop and said, has anybody handed him a phone? So how's that? But had I,
Wow.
replay that 15 years ago, I would have turned myself inside out. I don't know whether I would have got my phone, but the stress levels and you dumb idiot, why the hell did you leave your bloody phone? You knew that, all the beating up that I
Mm,
would have done myself. I
mm,
didn't take that. It was like, okay, what's it going to take for me to get my phone back? All of life comes through these joy and glory. And I just constantly stayed in the question, but I had my back because I trusted my awareness. I went into that shop 4 times. So, how does it get better than that? Having that
yeah,
kind of trust in yourself and knowing that and knowing that you've got tools to get you out of that spiral that I could potentially have gone into and maybe would have cost me another $1,000 for a new phone. Who knows? How
totally.
does it get
Yeah.
better?
How does it? Yeah, that's amazing. And look, I think, it's really that thing of recognizing that there is a life beyond these things that's available.
Mm,
And, again, these distractor implants, I mean, literally it can be just that thing of whenever you recognize yourself being in one of these things, you can
mm,
just literally go, okay, all the distractor implants and everything this is,
mm,
I destroy and uncreate it, you know and it can be as simple as that. And a lot of ourselves have tied ourselves so wound ourselves in these things so much, that it can be like you said, Viv, the willingness to really commit to yourself and create change with it. So we do have a boot camp coming up, which we would love for you guys to come and play. You're all invited. It's called Boot the Distractors in Relationships. And like Viv said, it's not just about one relationship with your partner. It's really about your relationship with yourself. But it
mm,
also is about all of these things that show up
mm,
so incessantly and so intensely for a lot of people in relationships. So
mm.
we start tomorrow. We start in just under 24 hours. So if we'll pop the link in below, and if you want to come and play, then please do so.
And if you want to have a relationship with yourself like you always have known should be available, could be available, and you nurture and cultivate that first and foremost, every relationship in your life starts to work for you in the ways that you've always known it could. How does it get any better?
How does it?
Come and play.
Yay! I'm excited. All right,
Thanks.
Busy. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.